All right, our guest on Naija Unfiltered on SYMFONI today is Dr. Andrew Mamedu, who is the country director of ActionAid, virtually the lone voice standing up for Nigerians and speaking for voiceless Nigerians. Okay, let's look at the democratic challenges in Nigeria and the seeming growing or rising authoritarianism. How do you speak to that?
I think for us in the civil society, there is this conversation that we have been having that there is seemingly high progression towards total state capture. High progression towards total state capture. So the Nigerian police, from our own estimation, has been captured. INEC is partially captured. We have reasons to believe this. So this is what we think. This is what we believe, right? The Judiciary, we believe, has been captured or partially captured, maybe not totally yet. So the civil society, the whole citizens' voice is what we then have to hold government accountable. So citizens would want to air their voice, and you should allow them express themselves. I don't know if you are following what is happening in which country now? Myanmar, right? So where you have protests, you have Gen Z protesting. We're saying we don't want to get there, and one of the ways not to get there is to allow citizens air them. Let them air themselves. Let them talk about the issues, and then you respond to them. You don't wait until people go on the streets, because you might not have total control over that. And because you don't have total control over that does not then mean that you will then stop people from going on the streets. So it's getting worse because for the first time, we are seeing a government saying that you can only protest in a stadium. That's new to us. We've not seen that before. Citizens have a right to organize. Citizens have a right to protest, enshrined in our constitution. The issue of even police permits has been dealt with by the law, right? You can only inform the police if you want to inform them. The police should guide you. Victor, I was in Spain some 2 months ago for the Financing for Development meeting, and I was involved in 2 major protests. The amount of police on the road, what were they doing? They were guiding us. They were escorting us, supporting us all through the routes we were going through. I have videos. I said, this is what protests should look like. But they never stopped you. They never did anything. They were armed to the teeth. They were well dressed and everything, but they were following and protecting all of us that were doing that protest. It was an international meeting. The town was full, but they were able to still protest. How do we get to that point as a country?
Do you think it has something to do with maybe level of development?
But the development did not just jump from the sky. It started gradually. So we copy some of the things that we're doing. We copy it from, when it comes to tax issue, we run to them. When it comes to issue of our fuel, we run them and we compare with them. So when it comes to this, let us also compare with them. We are, as at middle of the year, 226 persons have been killed due to insurgency and all the issues we have. But beyond that, we have the Cybercrime Act.
Well, we won't come into that.
So the Cybercrime Act that is now being used as a weapon against journalists, against citizens. So once you say anything, the police whips it up. So that's where this issue of state capture comes to play. The police, the judiciary, all of these are supposed to be independent. If they are not independent, it gets to a point where citizens would decide to be either docile, and I know Nigerians will not be docile. Nigerians will find a way. Yes, Nigerians are very resilient. They are very resilient. But it gets to a point where that resilience is turned down. You saw what happened in NSAS. That is an element of bottled anger. People were complaining about SARS. So you didn't tell me that the police, the insecurity institution did not hear all those complaints. Police will come, catch you, carry you, get some money from you. People were complaining. It started building. But right now, they don't want it at all. So once you start, they pick you up. See what is happening to Showore. That is an example. So how do you avoid all of this? The people speaking, the people complaining, all of us that are talking here, the president, we are all Nigerians. We wouldn't want the country to burn down. We wouldn't want the country to go ablaze, and no, that's not what we want. But we want the country to be at right. We want the country to be governed and everyone have their own rights and responsibility. As a citizen, I need to enjoy some rights. And the government, if the government is not providing those, I then have a right to ask questions. Because I have done my path. I voted, I'm paying my tax, and I have a right to speak and say, this is how I should be governed. The government should not decide how they should govern. The citizens should say, this is how we want you to govern. And now manipulating the system and then turning around election results, that is the worst of it all. So even if you are not doing right, you have your 4 years. After your 4 years, the citizens then decide that we'll either reward you because you have done well, or we remove you, we punish you because you have not done well. But then you then manipulate the will of the people, which is what we are seeing on a day-to-day basis. Elections, the last election we had 23%. That is the least we have had in the country of turnout from those voters that came out to vote on that election. If you continue, people will then stay away. Of course, it gives them more room, but we are encouraging citizens to come out. It gives them more room to manipulate the result. But we shouldn't. This country belongs to us. It should not be a case of, when it comes to our issue, when it comes to this issue, you can speak. When it comes to this one, allow us. We are the government, we will decide how and what to happen. If there's a protest, guide the people, support them. We are not in support of destruction of lives or wasting of lives and destruction of properties. We are not in support of that in any way. But government should have a way of curtailing issues before it gets to protest. And even if it gets to protest, so government should negotiate and work with citizens. How will this protest go? How do we make sure it's not hijacked? And not government paying another group to come and counter the group that wants to protest on behalf of the citizens.
There is shrinking civic space right now, and of course, it's shrinking every day, and people are fearing creeping authoritarianism in the country. What's your take on that?
The judiciary has a huge role to play. The judiciary should, when these issues come to the court, they should be bold enough to interpret what this actually means.
Unfortunately, you said that.
Yes, they have it.
State capture.
So part of the state capture. So they have the opportunity to remove themselves from this. Because if the police, the judiciary, INEC, those three are captured, then we're in trouble. If they are totally captured, then we're in trouble.
So what we have now is a partial capture.
It's a partial capture. So they still have the opportunity to get themselves right. So you see the National Assembly as well. The National Assembly, when you have a National Assembly that the leaders have been practically unpicked by the president, then they will do his bidding, unfortunately, right? So whether he's right or wrong, they will most likely do his bidding. But how do they, at some point, ask questions? So when we had a report yesterday about debt, GDP, and all of those conversations, we're like, okay, this is good coming from the speaker. But of course, the next day, the speaker says, no, I didn't say that. Why is he saying that? This National Assembly is not supposed to be a rubber stamp. There's supposed to be check and balance. We're not saying they should fight each other. We're not saying, no, they should work together. But there's supposed to be check and balance. If the president is coming with a bill for more loan, you are asking question, what is this for? Our loan is now currently being used for lots of recurrent expenditure. Yes, we are seeing some projects here and there, but it's not enough commensurate with the amount that we are spending, with the loan that we are taking. Our amount that we are taking and the loan we are taking, it is for generations yet unborn that will repay this loan. So for the issue of shrinking citizens' space, the citizens also needs to wake up. Power is not given. Power is taken. They would arrest. They would victimize. We, even as ActionAid, of course our name is on the list, they write us and all of that. But we know that we are doing the right thing. We do not have a bad intention. Our intention, just like most media organizations, their intention is for the good of this country. If you are doing the right thing, there are things that the government have done that we praise them. We say, yeah, this is good. Well done. Great job. There are things they have done. And the same way, if you have not done the right thing, we would also call you out and say, you haven't done the right thing. And it's the responsibility of the government to listen and minimize this whole issue of victimizing people, shrinking the citizens' space. Citizens are not able to speak. Because all of this, if you look at it, all of it is pointing towards the next election. In some ways, if we continue like this, one day there would be, this government would be, this current political party will be an opposition. So no matter how you do it, one day it will just turn out that it could be that the country will just rise up and say, we're tired, and just vote you out en masse. Or it could be that there could be something else that will just upturn you and you leave. So, but when that happens, when you get to opposition, how will you want to be treated? When you're on the street, you're not in power. Those of them, Erufai and all of that that are in opposition today, if they knew this would happen to them, how would they have acted then? Put yourself in their shoes right now and act the way. Allow the citizens space. That one should not be tampered with. That is the social contract that binds the citizens and the government. That is what allows you to be there as government. Because we the people, that's what the Constitution says, we the people have decided on this. And if we have decided on this, you need to respect and uphold the mandate of the people and not to shrink that space in pretense that you are carrying out the rules and dictates of our Constitution.
Let's look at the issue of insecurity and how it's impacting on governance.
Yeah, thank you. The level of insecurity, I think, is no longer one part of the country, even in my states. I hear now that it's regular kidnapping, regular on a weekly basis. You have people being kidnapped. You are not able to travel. I'm not able to travel, unfortunately, to my own states. Unfortunately, I would love to be traveling. I'm thinking of what do I do this coming holiday and all that. But it is getting worse. It's not getting better, right? As at June this year, we have 2,226 people that have been killed from insurgency and kidnappings. That is more than the figure for last year. So it shows that it's getting worse. It shows that we need to change our tactics. We need to change our strategy. It shows that, so it is a case of, government says, we are working, we're trying, we're working around the clock. And Victor, the budget, the funding to the security is increasing. The budget is increasing over the years. So we have long passed the 1 trillion threshold for security. Long. Before now, it used to be 200 billion. I remember when it used to be 200 billion. We shout, it's too much. But now we have long past 1 trillion, 3 trillion for the security architecture of this country. But still, we are not able to curtail it. It shows that we are getting something fundamentally wrong. There are root causes of this. In the Northeast alone, you have over 33,000 persons that have level of issues with food insecurity. So that is a huge army waiting to be recruited. So across the country, the level of poverty, hunger, people are willing to do anything, including getting involved in kidnapping and all of that. So before now, when people were busy, they say, I don't mind devil workshop, people are busy, people will think less of those things. But right now, people are thinking, and it's striving. So once this person succeeds, so the second person succeeds, it's like 419. Let's not deceive ourselves. It is because the people are seeing that it's getting results, so more people are getting into it, and they don't have other alternative. So they get into it, and the same thing with the level of insecurity we have in the country, from kidnapping to insurgents, all of that across the country. So it is both the use of kinetic and non-kinetic means to deal with it. However, what are the root causes of this? Poverty, hunger, the issue of climate change, the farmer herders crisis. Climate change is big on it. If you look at the Northeast, the Lake Chad, what has happened to the Lake Chad? The Lake Chad has shrunk by 90%. 90%. So it means that only 1/10 of what it was about 25 years ago is what is remaining now. And of course, people will find naturally higher ground for grazing. And that's why that whole movement, and the movement comes, they get into farmers' ways, they start fighting. It causes those crises. The same thing, the issue of poverty, the issue of bad governance. So when you say, why are you talking? Why are you talking about accountability? It manifests in these things like this. If there's bad governance, people are not using the resources actively or very well, it will manifest. People will then come out, take up arms against the state and against the citizens and find soft targets to be able to deal with them. So if we deal with all these issues, we have good governance, we are accounting for people, we have these resources that we are making, the taxes that we have met our target and all that, the monies we are making, and investing it and getting people to be recruited. People, I got a land to do a farm in Kuje. I started and I abandoned it. Big land, and I abandoned it. The reason is I don't want to be kidnapped. I don't have money for ransom. Right? So the same thing, this is just one. There are several examples of people like that are doing different things around farming. But clearly, and we're saying we have issues of food insecurity in the country. Our price of food is going up. We have lands here and there, but because of the level of insecurity, it has implications, several implications. It affects the people. So the people also have a role to play. We as citizens, we need to blow the whistle, we need to speak up, we need to report issues. We have our role to play. It affects the people eventually. You do it, the economy will die. You know, I said I was going to travel. I said I was my farm and the farm was supposed to do. You would have employed people and paid those people, but you are no longer able to do that. So it affects the people eventually, but the government ultimately has a responsibility to ensure that we have safer environment for the economy to thrive. We talk about investment. The biggest fear, the biggest attraction for investment is profits. But the biggest fear, two things. One, your rule of law and the level of security. So that they guarantee that they can make their money legitimately and go where they want to go with their money. That one is guaranteed. Then two, that they are safe. Like when they come there, their money, their property, themselves, they are safe. Then it will thrive, basically. So we have a whole lot to do around the level of insecurity in the country.
Of course, I want to end this conversation without dragging you back to the judicial panel that ActionAid set up in March 2025 when they submitted their report. Setting up that panel and the report. What's your take on the report after?
Okay, thank you very much. So ActionAid we have our work in election. So we're engaged in election work. What we do is how do we improve citizens' engagement in the electoral process? And we discovered that one of the areas we have a gap is citizens' engagement in the electoral process of the election. And people think that once the vote is cast and they announce result, that's the end. That's not the end. The end is when, in some cases, when the Supreme Court gives their final judgment, or in some cases, appeal court, depends on the level of the election. So when the appeal court or Supreme Court gives the final judgment, so that means even when you appeal it and up to the Supreme Court level, that is when it is the end. So citizens should be able to follow the same way you are motivated, go and register, you go register. You then say, oh, come out and vote, you go and vote. Follow your vote, you count your vote, follow it and ensure that it's counted and it's recorded, it's registered and it's announced. The same way, follow your votes, follow the judiciary to see how is the judgment given. Because of the element of trust, so people now track and follow the judgments. However, we have seen some controversial judgments, like the Imo judgment is a controversial judgment. Like the case of the former Senate president of this country that went and contested for tickets in the ruling party, but never bought a ticket or went to contest for that in his for a senator. But the court somehow gave judgment and said that he was a candidate, and today he is in the Senate. Ahmed Lawa, mention him, right? So those judgments are controversial, and because of that, we're like, okay. And the people say there's nothing you can do. Final Habitat has given a judgment. We're like, okay, action is okay. How do we get to a point where we have a citizens' court? A citizens' court, that's where we are headed. A citizens' court that will begin to ask questions. Because if you think that you are appeal court, you're giving your final judgment, or your Supreme Court, citizens' courts will then ask you questions and say, we don't agree with this. And guess what, Victor? This group, the panel that we put together, they are experts. Experts. The best of the best in the country that we have pulled together. It's not just only judges that were pulled together. So we have about 4 judges retired judges that were of impeccable standards. That you knew that these ones did not collect bribe. Right? They vouched for from several quarters before they were brought into that panel. Right? You also have professor of political science that have seen it all in the almost at the highest level in INEC. Right? That understands the interpretation, the nuances of our election and electoral processes. So you have also senior advocate of Nigerians. You have lawyers in the panel. You have journalists. You have civil society group. So you have all of these groups pulled together. You have people also within governments that are heading government institutions, professor of law, right? In this comment, and we look at these judgments. We look at it. I'm part of the panel. We critique it. Look at it from all sides and all shades. Put side by side the Constitution. Put side by side the Electoral Act, look at everything, look at the judgment, and interpret and say what was meant, what was not meant. So that was what happened in this case. And I'm like, okay, on this issue, perfect. On this issue, perfect. However, the Supreme Court is a policy court. There are cases where the Supreme Court is supposed to take a stand. Take, for example, the issue of the Rivers suspension of the governor and the House of Assembly members. Till today, the Supreme Court is quiet about it. Why? The Supreme Court, so we said the Supreme Court should be bold and take that position and make judgment, not minding whose us is God. So we saw that issue of defection, they talked around it, but they did not deal with it. They were supposed to say, was there a defection or not? And give your judgment around that. And we fought at the Supreme Court based on that. There were several other little issues that came up, but that was a clear issue. And the whole country rallied around us, with us, and agreed with us and said Supreme Court needs to do more. So the Supreme Court should be proactive. The Supreme Court should look out for erring judges. Don't only wait for only when people report them and no, but look out for erring judges. Look for controversial judgments and question them. Do not only wait until people raise complaint and all that. The judiciary is still the hope, supposed to be the hope of the common man. It's the last bus stop. If people lose faith in the judiciary, what else? People will say, then what next? Go to God. That is the only thing. Slogan for us. Nigerians were very spiritual, so we'll go to God. But we don't want to believe that our judiciary has been totally captured. We don't want to lose total faith in our judiciary. Nigeria is our country, and the judiciary has a role to play, and the judiciary should play that role. So on such issues, particularly that is required, that sends a landmark, that is a policy statement, like the River State suspension of the president and the governor and the House of Assembly, the Supreme Court should give a judgment on it. And for such things like defection, the Supreme Court should give a ruling on it, so that we know once and for all, this is the judgment, and this is because once the governor, we hear the governor will soon resume this week or next week. Now 6 months would have been over, hopefully. If he resumes, then it will be an exercise in futility. The Supreme Court will say, oh, he has already resumed, and they will just shy away from it. That is what they are targeting. But there are cases you see that the Supreme Court is interested in. Once it favors some parties, the Supreme Court gets interested, and they are very fast in giving judgment in such cases. So such cases that is landmark, Supreme Court should also be very proactive and give judgments on them.
Why do you think that they seem to shy away from some cases, or when some individuals bring cases, they have speedy trials and get quote and unquote, perception they say is key, the kind of judgment they expect?
Several reasons. One is, like I said, there's a perception of capture of the judiciary. There's also the perception of he who pays the piper dictates the tune, whether you like it or not. Why would you, I'm debating a bit, how would you explain that the current Inspector General of Police is retained even when his tenure is over? Why? So you think that Inspector General of Police can challenge the president? He will never. So even if the president is wrong or has given a wrong instruction, he will follow it. So the same thing with the courts. When you have buildings being set up, commissioned, projects being done, it seemed like favor. It seemed like favor, and they have to repay that. And unfortunately, this goes for all politicians. All politicians try to cover their part. You hear of politicians saying they are setting aside this amount of billion to pursue their cases. When election is over, what did they tell you? Go to courts. It's simple. Because they know that they can, in some ways, procure judgments. So for us, the EFCC should start tracking and pursuing such issues. How are people procuring judgment? Who is procuring judgment? It's not only when opposition is involved. Now, this is all around, all politicians, both opposition, sometimes in rigging, is who the one that rigs the other, that wins the election. So in procurement of judgment and all of that, politicians should also stay away from it. So our court system, that is the impression, that is the notion that people have, that it dance to the will and purposes of the ruling party, and while leaving out the opposition out there. But clearly, that is not the way it's supposed to be.
All right. Everybody seems to be waking up to the reality that January is around the corner, and the 5% tax introduced on petroleum products, it can come into life anytime. Why should Nigerians be scared or worried about this 5% tax?
Yeah, thank you, Victor. ActionAid Nigeria, we've been talking about this, so the tax is not new. The federal government was clear, it's in the new tax act that has been signed into law, recently gazetted, but will take effect from January. However, the 5% component would only take effect as soon as the Minister of Finance pronounces that, and or he has the latitude to start that in January. So why people are scared, worried, is because of the impact of other things that has happened in the economy since this current administration, the current president's administration, President Tinubu's administration, came into power, which was in May 2 years ago. And the first day the president made a pronouncement, subsidy is gone. So since then, there have been several things, the devaluation of the naira or the flotation of the naira, the various taxes and levies, electricity, gas, several things have been happening around the economy. And all of these have been affecting the poorest of the poor the most. SMEs have been complaining, they're paying more bills, paying more taxes. Even the big companies have been complaining as well. Imagine petroleum moving from 195 naira then to 950 naira where we are currently. So that's a huge leap, and those have got implication. So if you currently petrol is 195, you add another 5%. Petrol was moved from 195 to now 950. So if you add another 5%, you are getting close to 1,000. So petrol now going for 1,000 and maybe more, depends on the price of crude in the international market, which is not determined solely by Nigeria. That would have more impact in the economy and in the lives of the people. Petroleum is a perfectly inelastic produce. What it means is that a shift in the price, any alteration of the price, has a direct impact. Consumers don't have so much alternative. They will still go for it. And if they go for it, the price will go up. It will affect the consumers directly. And the consumers would transfer that price in all the things that they do, from to your tomatoes, to your rice, to your rent, to your transport. So all of those will be directly affected. And it will then, of course, affect inflation. It will affect the cost of living. And Nigerians have not gotten out of the woods yet. With the current reform that the current government is doing, some of the things are said to be working. So with the GDP, for instance, was rebased. So we're seeing the GDP has improved, right? That's rebasing of the GDP. We are seeing that inflation is beginning to reduce gradually. It's not that there's no inflation. I think Nigeria should get that right. So there's inflation, but it's reducing. The rate of inflation is reducing gradually. We are beginning to see some things at the macro level, but at the micro level, the impact has not started showing yet. Prices of things, recently, of course, we imported lots of food produce into the country, and prices of food produce, some of them are beginning to come down, while some of them are going up. But the micro level, the everyday Nigerian, has not started feeling the impact of the government yet. It takes time. So if the macro level, the bigger level, the big economy is working, it then needs to translate to the micro level. And if you do not then wait for it to translate to the micro level, you then go ahead to increase this 5%, it would increase the burden on the micro level, the community, the people, the poor persons in the community, and it will then further delay the impact that people are supposed to feel. Nigerians are complaining. If you listen to radio, you listen to TV, I'm sure the president knows it. The president says he listens to them. He hears the cries of Nigerians. If you go to the community, so it's not just about wailing. These are practical communities. Actually, we work in several communities across the 36 states in this country. And the communities we work in, and most of them are in the hard-to-reach communities that we work in. And these communities, people are complaining on a daily basis. The calls you get, the call for urgent 2K support here and there. So all of those, putting this 5% at this time, right here and now, would definitely not do us any good. And that's why organized groups are coming on board and now beginning to talk about it. So you have the trade unions already coming on board and threatening strike. So I don't think the government needs to wait to get to this level of strike before they will back down on that. If I were them, the election is around the corner. You have oppositions that are coming up. This will be a strong tool for the opposition to use against them. So that is why people are talking about it, and the government ought to listen.
Then again, people have argued that these things were in the provision during the engagement, public engagement, town hall meetings, and invite by the National Assembly. Why was it that nobody saw it, or even the civil society didn't see it, or they thought it was not relevant at that point in time?
So we cannot forget that the tax law, the Tax Act, was a combination of several things. Actually, it had like 5 different bills or acts that were combined and pulled together. So it is easy to mix up or miss that one out. So it was easy for the people to overlook or not to have noticed that until somebody went in and, of course, started bringing out. There are several implications of the Tax Act. So the narrative is that, oh, the poor persons will pay less tax. That's the narrative. So if you make less than 50 million naira as an SME, you will not pay tax. If you earn less than 800,000 naira per annum, you will not pay tax. So those were the narratives that were pushed forward. So Nigerians ordinarily were like, what percentage of Nigerians, over 90% of Nigerians that fall into that bracket that would benefit from it? Of course, they were happy. However, there were some other things like this 5%. It is not new per se. We've had this existing. The FEMA Act has been existing, but they are now trying to bring it and give it life. And we know that this tax act, the president of our current president is a tax guru, so he's going to implement it. So we are saying that. However, the latitude with that is that it says that until the minister gives it effect. So we are hoping that the Minister of Finance would put a pause, a pause. We're not saying we shouldn't do that. However, there's other components of it. We do not also want to put the cart before the horse. Putting the cart before the horse means that in the past we have heard, oh, Nigerians need to sacrifice, Nigerians need to sacrifice. But Nigerians have sacrificed. We have seen the fuel subsidy removed. Now, more money is coming to the federation. And what we hear is that more money is going to the states. More money is going to the state government and the local government. But the money has not yet translated, has not gone into the hands of the people. So this 5%, we shouldn't make that same mistake. We should rather say this 5%, if we're going to do roads, we're going to maintain our road, this is the structure and the framework upon which this would work. So we haven't seen that yet. So those are the questions that we are asking. And good enough, that provision in the law allows the minister to hold on until all of these things are in place.
Of course, we know government says they are targeting 796 billion annually just from petrol, this 5% tax. And if you also look at their argument that they want to boost non-oil sector and then use the proceeds to fund transport infrastructure, valid argument. What do you think about it? Don't you think that maybe we can also concede to them that it could also bring about positive change in the long run?
So there's an adage that says that the day that will be good, you will know from the dawn of the day, right? So clearly, what we have seen in practice from the amount that have been recovered, it has to be accounted for. We Nigerians need to know exactly. It is not rocket science. What we are saying is something that other countries are practicing, is what we have done in the past. We have seen subsidy being removed in the past, or part of subsidy being removed. We have seen elements of this kind of things in the past. And we saw how those monies or those amounts were ring-fenced and used for that purpose. What we do not want is that this amount, 1 trillion naira, almost 1 trillion naira, if you add the aviation fuel and all of that, it will exceed over 1 trillion naira. This amount is properly utilized, the framework to deal with it. So if you do not have that, then how are we sure that this argument would hold? How are we not sure that there will be more escalate? How are we not sure that a second presidential jet would not be on the offering? How are we not sure that a resident of one person, let's say the Chief Justice of the Federation, all of a sudden becomes worn out and we need to replace it? How are we not sure that one demand will just come up that Nigerians would not prioritize? But of course, the government can prioritize it, and the ordinary Nigerians would not definitely benefit from it directly. So what we are saying is, these amounts, if it's going to be for this purpose, then let's ring-fence it. Victor, I traveled recently and I saw some toll gates around our country. So some toll gates are already springing up across the country. So if these toll gates are springing up, those monies are supposed to be used for maintaining our road infrastructure as well. So they'll be used for maintaining our road infrastructure. This money will be used for maintaining road infrastructure. Show Nigerians are very easygoing people. They will give you the latitude that they will allow you. But show Nigerians that this is what this money will be used, and this is the trust and confidence. If I were the president, I will set up a technical team that will make sure that this fund is accounted for. I will make sure that no politicians have a way around funds. They have a way of managing such funds and ensuring that politics comes to play in it. Who is my brother? Who is my sister? Who is managing it? Who is not there? Who is not there? Who is getting it? Which region is getting? Which region is not getting? So all those political elements has to be eliminated from this fund. Let this fund work. Until we have that in place, then the president and the team should hold on and put all of these structures and system in place before we can now make that argument. But more so, let the bigger fund, let the larger fund work. We already removed subsidy. We're making trillions of naira from that subsidy removal. Let that fund work. Let us see beyond just saying we're giving more states and local government funds.
What do you make of the argument that Nigeria pays almost the least in terms of pump price compared to other countries in the continent? At least about 33 out of 37, Nigeria pays the least in terms of pump price. Do you see it as a justification for this increase, this 5% tax?
Totally no. Let me tell you why. Nigeria may pay the least in terms of pump price, but we have several other places that Nigeria is paying those taxes or those bills. From when you live here to when you get to your house, you can count how you are dealing with those. Is it healthcare? So healthcare, in these countries that you are mentioning, there's health insurance that is paid for. There's healthcare that is paid for by the government. Healthcare is expensive, so the government takes charge of it. So there's public healthcare that is functioning. Is it education? That your children do not pay for education up till after secondary school level. And even in tertiary institutions, citizens of those countries are heavily subsidized. The government pays for it. Is it support system to the families? I know people that stay in these countries, right? And the government sends them allowances or amount, depends on what they earn. So if you are below a particular bracket, you are sure of getting up to $1,000, up to $2,000, depending on what you earn per month. So the government subsidizes them. So clearly, if you then come to this country and you are saying that this is one small subsidy, form of subsidy, not necessarily subsidy, that we're doing. The second way to look at it is we are oil producing country. Yes, other ones are oil producing country. We should be comparing like for like. We should be looking at other countries like Russia. We should be looking at Kuwait. We should be looking at Cuba. Kuwait, Qatar. We should be looking at those countries that also produce oil. How much do they charge? If you want to look at it dollar for dollar, cent for cent, that is where we should be comparing with. So we should not be comparing ourselves with highly capitalist economy like the United States. But of course, the United States, they have one thing to. So it's a matter of give and take. The government invests heavily and subsidize in some ways. So what is our government subsidizing that is quite visible and clear to everyone? That you know that every average poor Nigerian will benefit from it. So I don't buy that argument that our fuel is too cheap. I don't buy that argument. And the whole argument that it's too cheap and our neighbors are smuggling it. The tankers are not small vehicle. They're not jerry cans. The tankers are 30,000 liters. They are big trucks, they are smuggled through the borders, and we have customs, we have security agencies surrounding these borders, and they just allow them to go. Issues of accountability and corruption that we need to deal with within the system. And the citizens should not be made to pay the price of inefficiency of government.
Of course, the penalty for non-compliance, we are told, is from 10 million. That's the penalty for non-compliance. Does it justify why we should kick against it? Or do you think government has a point there?
So people should comply with the law, and that is why we're saying that the government needs to make it easy and make it easy and make it easy for people to comply with. If you make it more difficult for people to comply with, then you will be ready to. I think one of the major things they said in this new tax act is they want to bring in more people into the tax bracket. Our tax bracket just needs to be expanded. Let us start with our politicians. They do not pay the right tax. Let us be frank with ourselves. We had a meeting with some tax officials and we had that conversation. And of course, they say that's political. They cannot delve into it. That's left for us as civil society to push it. You become a DG of a parastatal. Let's speak the truth, Victor. Even if these things are hidden under. You become a DG of some parastatals. The first 1, 2, 3 months, you get an allowance of 200 million for you to settle down. That amount is not taxed. That amount is not taxed. Then they say your salary is 800,000, but you get furniture allowance, you got newspaper allowance, you get wardrobe allowance. All those allowances are not put into the tax brackets. So all of those are support. So according to the tax law, those that will first go to jail and that will pay this 10 million or pay the penalty, let's start with the government officials. Let the government officials lead by example. And the reason I am this passionate about it is ActionAid as an organization, our staff are crying about the amount of tax we pay. We pay our tax to the last 10 kobo. So they come here, they do audit and do check and all of that. They say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. We keep improving. But for our salaries, we declare everything. There's no pay out of payroll. So everybody pays their tax, including myself. As a Nigerian, people should pay their tax. But the government has a responsibility to lead by example. The president should make example of some people and make sure the tax authority go after high government officials that are evading tax, including our senators and all of that. So if a constituency allowance, let's leave it at what Sani told us some years ago, 15 million naira per month. I'm sure it would be more than that now. But let's leave it at that. If 15 million naira is gotten as constituency allowance by our senators, for what purpose? Is that an income or is an expense? So if it's an expense, it's not supposed to be taxed. But the way it is run as an income. It goes and the senator has his or her discretion on how it is used. So that amount should be taxed. It is not the 700 and something or 800 and something or 1.2 million that they earn as salary. That's what you are taxing. That is no. We are not telling ourselves the truth. So yes, people should pay the price, and let's start with the government officials who are putting this law in place.
What do you even make of the revenue mobilization? Talking about increasing the remuneration of public officials, that they are poorly paid.
I think the first thing to do is let's bring all the money into the basket. We are not putting all the monies in the basket. That's why we are having this argument. Why are they deceiving us? Why are they deceiving Nigerians, saying that they are poorly paid? Bring all the allowances and put them on the basket and say, this is what they earn. It is not tell us that the president earns less than $1 million or 1.2 million and the vice president. That's not what he earns. There are other allowances that the president gets. So if you pull all of them together, what does it come to on a monthly basis? So if his furniture allowance is 200 million, you divide it by 12, and you get portion of that as part of his. If his newspaper allowance is this, if his wardrobe allowance, you add everything. And let's say all of that comes to 500 million. It's 500 million divided by 12. That is what the president earns. That is what the Senate president earns. That is what the lawmakers, all of them earn. And that should be taxed. Then you cannot come back to us and say, are they poorly paid or not? But from what you are telling us, that the president earned 1.2, obviously 1.2 is poorly paid. If the president is earning 1.2, he's poorly paid. But we know that the president is not earning 1.2. We know that a DG, and but it's like professors. We know that what the professor is paid is what they are paid. They are not expecting any other thing. So the professor does not end up to a million. We know that is what they get paid. And they find other means to get the right papers. They do researches and all of that. They find other means to augment their income. So if what they are actually paid is that 1 million, by all means, as civil society, we will support and say that they should increase their money. That also calls for a review of our living wage. The minimum wage that we call 70,000 is not a living wage. So that means that has to be reviewed. It means that 70,000, so maybe minimum wage for this country, for you to survive, minimum maybe at 200,000 naira, 250, 300,000 naira. Then we can then start talking about other people. But before you do that, like I said, every amount that they get outside their salary should be brought into the basket and declared and say, this is the total amount that this person, this government official gets. Then we can have that argument of increasing salary or not.
All right, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you once again.
Thank you, Victor.
Thanks for sparing us your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.